Good evening. We are at day 2 of the 10-day program. So I talked on Monday, I wanted to do something about longevity, but I kind of switched gears on that. I thought maybe a back to school for patients because it's a common conversation in the office. So a lot of people don't understand what they're supposed to do diet wise. So we're going to do a little heads up and get started early on that before the end of the program here. All right. So your supplements, back to school for patients. So we're going to review the supplements. We're going to look at the foods on the program. We'll look at our macros and then why I promote a low carbohydrate, high fat diet. So if you're on the blood sugar program, here's your supplement schedule. Remember, it's your dairy, your shakes are 3 times a day, up to 3 times. If you only want to do 2, that's fine. Your SP cleanse, 5 capsules 3 times a day. Diaplex, 5 capsules 3 times a day, and Gymnema, which quenches the sugar taste, 2 tablets in the morning, 1 tablet in the afternoon, and 1 in the evening. If you're on the inflammation, the first 2, the shakes and the SP cleanse, are the same, but you'll be doing Boswellia, 1 tablet 3 times a day, Cyruta Plus, 3 tablets 3 times a day, and black currant seed oil, 2 pearls 3 times a day. And I have a couple of you doing the immune system support. So same thing for the shakes and the SP cleanse, but you're doing Immuplex, 3 capsules 3 times a day, and the Thymex, 2 tablets 3 times a day. All right, so the 10-day food program doesn't change. It's not like our 21-day program where we have we can't have protein for the first 11 days and that kind of thing. So you can have your protein this whole time. Remember, I am letting you have coffee. Just try to make an organic selection when you can. If you want to use like green tea, it has caffeine in it, that's fine. I'm not limiting you on that in these programs. More, this is to eliminate the sugar and change your eating a little bit, clean it up from what you've done since January and April. So your vegetables, still the same. Serving size, half a cup. Your target is 13 to 15 servings per day. That's a lot of vegetables. So if you're still hungry, then we have a problem here. So you'll need to talk to me. Starchy vegetables. So you can have half a cup. Remember, we're limiting those to 1 per day because starchy means more carbohydrates and there's going to be more sugar. On page 16 for your fruit, serving size is half to 3/4 of a cup. And I want you to only use it in your shakes. So you want to divide that up between the 3 shakes. I am a big fan of just doing the shaker bottle. So, I don't add anything to that. And then your proteins, serving sizes are 3 ounces, 2 to 3 servings per day. Remember, we talked about the palm of your hand is about 25 grams if you had a piece of chicken or a piece of beef or whatever. Your miscellaneous servings are 2 teaspoons when that's your, I kind of leave that for your oils and things like that, your 3 to 4 servings per day. And then your beverages, like I said, you may have coffee, you may have decaf also, but it has to be Swiss water decaf. We used No Fun Joe. You can get it on Amazon, and it's Prime Day, so you probably get it at a really great price. I don't make anything from this. It's just what I like, and I try to share that so you don't falter and try to figure out what to get. So you can have mineral water, spring water. I'm allowing you to have a bubbly water, something like that. That's fine as well. Green tea and your herb tea and your regular coffee. I would limit it to, I wouldn't do distilled water. And stay away from your tap water, especially if you're on city water, which most of us don't do that anyway. And like I said, I usually have my big bottle that I fill with water, which I like to use because it's renewable. So keep that in mind as well. Your vegetables, so if it's leafy green, go for it. So you want to eat colors from the rainbow. Your fruits, remember, limit it to your berries, like blueberries, red raspberries, black raspberries, strawberries, because they're very low in sugar. They're low with what we call the glycemic index. Your lean meats, so you want to stay away from things that are processed meats like sausage and canned meat and hot dogs, cold cuts, something like that. You can have canned fish and seafood. Just make sure it's in a BPA-free container. We talk about the BPA in our 21-day, but that's bisphenol A. It's an endocrine disruptor. So you can broil your fish, bake, or any of your meats, broil, bake, roast, poach, whatever you feel is the best for you. So remember, you're going to limit and really ideally avoid dairy. So use your nut milk. So I'll let you do that. Your eggs are acceptable, but make sure they're free range. No soda, diet soda, fruit juices, energy drinks, anything like that. I am letting you have coffee that's caffeinated. If it's decaffeinated, it has to be Swiss water decaf. Remember, they normally decaffeinate coffee with bleach. So we want to do a Swiss water decaf. And no BPA free packaging. And if you have food, if you're allergic to eggs, don't think that you're magically going to be able to eat them. So be aware of your own food tolerances. And if you have questions, just reach out to us. The email that we send out, if you respond to that, we'll get that information. Marianne will get it to me right away. So the fats, you can have all the good stuff. You know, this is what makes you satiated. And as we go to back to school today, I'll explain that a little bit more. So remember, this is your plate for your challenge. These are your proteins, these are your veggies, and this is your miscellaneous. So you hear the word macro all the time. What is a macro? You know, it's a fancy term. We have macronutrients and we have micronutrients. Macro means big. So a macronutrient is going to be a carbohydrate, a fat, and a protein. And they're made up of those components, and that's all our foods. Now we have micronutrients, which are like selenium and copper and things like that, but we only need tiny bits of those. So carbohydrates, we know there are two types. There's a complex and a simple. 1 gram of carbohydrate equals 4 calories. So we use that. It's our energy food, our starch and sugar. It's the least expensive, very plentiful and available. You know, you walk into our local Publix and see the variety in those center aisles. Very easily to digest, and it's widely distributed in plant food. So when we look at that, we break that down into you can kind of have a picture here. So your carbohydrates would be your fruit, your grains, your breads, your rices, your legumes, which are still a carbohydrate but have a little bit of incomplete protein. Then you have your proteins, and then you have your dairy, which is a little bit on the fat side and the protein side, and then you have your straight fats. And when we talk about fats, we talk about the good fats, but I'll go through all those with you. So complex carbohydrates, this is where you want to steer toward, is eating more of those complex carbohydrates. And you hear me all the time say that I want you to eat foods that are nutrition rich and fiber dense. And that's what I mean by that. Foods you have to chew, foods that are going to take a little bit of time to digest. Your simple or refined carbohydrates, and we refer to them as simple sugars, are your refined flour and sugar. And we know what those look like. As appealing as they may be, they're a detriment to all our health. Our health in our United States. I mean, it's just a really sad, you know, that's why we call it the SAD diet, the standard American diet, because it is sad. So your brain only needs 20 grams of carbohydrates really to function normally in a day. And the average American eats about 295 grams of carbohydrates a day. That equals 1,180 calories. So the most of their nutrients are just in that one macro, and it's way too much. And it's what really happens. And you see here on the left, when you eat food that is carbohydrate laden, you know, that the brain gets that information. The liver then has to decrease its own glucose production, and it has to bring up its way to take away that sugar. So then the low density lipoproteins will get managed to carry that sugar around, and then we store it as fat. So we only need a little bit, but we can get by with just 20 grams. And if we don't eat it, our liver makes it for us in the form of a ketone. So we're covered in all the bases. So your fats are your next macronutrient. There are three types. We have saturated, we have unsaturated, and we have, I don't know if you can see behind my picture here, but we have trans fats. So 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories. And that's energy food. It supports cell growth. It protects your organs. It keeps you warm in the winter, which we really need here in Florida. Helps you absorb nutrients and also produces a great amount of number of hormones. And you can you don't have to be the biochemistry here, but I'm just trying to show you the difference. So this is a saturated. This is an unsaturated. It still has a bond here. And this is where the trans bond gets in trouble, where we switch a hydrogen for a carbon, and that becomes a problem. So our body doesn't really recognize it, and we store it differently. Saturated fats are usually solid at room temperature. Generally, they're animal foods. They contain more saturated fatty acids than unsaturated fats. So your examples would be meat, poultry, eggs, fish. Cut out the ice cream, the butter, but you have the butter. Some chocolate, like the really, really dark chocolates, coconut and palm oil. And then your unsaturated fats are your salmon, your really oily fishes, your olive oil, your nuts, your seeds, your avocados. We use like sesame seeds and chia seeds. So we've got a lot of fat there with a little bit of protein on the nut side and the seed side. And of course, trans fat examples. So you can see that this is the bad fat, and you combine it with the refined flour and sugar, and we have a deadly, recipe right there. So the trans fat are fats that can have a higher boiling point. And when we talk about a fat that we eat, these have boiling points of 400 to 600 degrees. Our human body temperature only goes up to 98.6. So oils like olive oil have a low boiling point, so that's why we use them, because our body can utilize them. The trans fats the body doesn't recognize. It tries to store it as fat, and so on our ladies we see that kind of dimply cellulite on the legs, and sometimes you see that on men, and kind of the fat like on the back of their back around the midsection will get kind of dimply. That's those trans fats building up in the area. These 10-day programs and the 21-day programs are really ideal to try to eliminate those trans fats out of our bodies. Then we have our last macronutrient, which is protein. Two types. We have plant-based and we have animal-based. Each of those, 1 gram of protein equals 4 calories. So we need this to build and repair tissues. It makes enzymes and hormones. They're the building block of our bones, and it also builds muscle, cartilage, ligament, skin, blood, and it's a component of every cell. So it's super important that we have the protein. But how much of what? So here's examples of our protein. We have our nuts again. Remember, we had that little bit of a crossover. We have our eggs, and when you have a free-range egg, it's going to be better cholesterol-wise because the chickens that are producing those eggs are not fed grains. They're letting them eat grass and bugs like they were designed to do. When we start taking eggs and feeding the chickens genetically modified grains, then those eggs, they are what you eat. So if you eat them, if they're eating the grains, you're eating those grains. So those kind of eggs would make your cholesterol raise, and that's the difference. So they're not bad. And LDL and HDL, they're not bad. It's because our body makes them. It's just that they have to work so hard to manage the diets that our people have in America. So when we talk plant-based and animal-based proteins, we have essential amino acids and we have non-essential amino acids. So the non-essential amino acids are found in all proteins, whether it's plant-based or animal-based. And our body can be synthesized by those. We could synthesize those. The essential amino acids, on the other hand, are obtained from nutrition, and we can only get them from animal. So we have about 8 or 9 essential amino acids that we have to have. Leucine, isoleucine, and valine are the 3 what we call branch chain amino acids that are really necessary to build muscle. So if my patients are vegan or vegetarian, it's a little bit more challenging to meet that essential amino acid need because they're eating the legumes and the grains, which only have the non-essential amino acids. We already make those, so that's not a big deal. So looking at your sources, and you hear me talk about, the size of your palm of your hand is about 3 ounces. This kind of gives you a general grams of protein. So an egg only has 6 grams of protein, has a lot of fat, but only 6 grams. So you can see the different sources. We try to be careful with cheese. We have it in the diet, but we don't overdo it in the diet. So what should your macros look like? So I kind of put a little formulation here, what I recommend to patients. It's not set in stone. It's just what I found that really works with patients, and myself included. So carbohydrates, you want to eat at least 100 grams or less. And I like to keep it in the range of 50 to 75. And I like to vary it. So I don't stay just one the whole time because our bodies are so accommodating. Your protein should be at least half your desired body weight in grams of protein. Half your desired body weight in grams. And your fat should be your desired body weight in grams. So for me, I'm at my desired weight, which is about 130. So I eat 50 to 75 grams, which is about 200 to 300 calories. My protein is between 55 and 65. If I have a heavy train day, I go higher, but that can be 220 to 260 calories of a day. And then the fat is about 130 grams, which gives me almost 1100 calories. So I can have total caloric intake, which for me personally, I don't really count calories. I really more worry about my carbohydrates staying low and my fat staying high. But I would be eating between 15 and 1700 calories a day. So that's more than adequate. If you haven't come in to do the InBody, on that InBody, it will calculate for your body weight what your what we call your basal metabolic rate is, what the number of calories you need for your body to burn at rest. And that gives you a huge understanding of what that means. So I have enough calories to sustain me and then some. And if we're eating enough of the good fat, then our body can get rid of the fat. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. So I always tease this is the food pyramid during the summertime, that, the bottom of it's an upside down triangle. We have maybe a salad once or twice a week. And then, you're conscious of your calorie intake, and then you have hangover food, and then you have your alcohol. So, and it's okay every once in a while, but not all the time. And so here's what we are approached with by, this is from the agriculture. This is from the Florida.gov. The United States.gov. It is the food pyramid guide that they promote. And so you can see all the grains and stuff at the bottom, which we know is not good for us. And it's what's caused the problem with our society as it is today. A couple vegetables, a couple fruits, very little meat, a little bit of milk, and just be really careful with that butter. Well, I propose something much different. So in 2016, so you can kind of see the variety of how they've done things, where we went from one thing to the other. And for me, this is what I like, that, you stop buying junk food. If you're fat, try to eat less, more fat and less sugar, and exercise. So I'm working on a program now. It's a 12-hour class on nutrition. And as I was reviewing I have to document everything I say. So I review a lot. And so we're just talking about brain health and the good fats. And so I did a little research, and I came up with almost 35,000. That was just a low number of peer-reviewed reports talking about how important exercise is for the brain and for the body. So, that's a lot of opinions. And, so I take that for seriousness. These are peer-reviewed research reports. So they actually prove that exercise is good for the brain and the body. But you can see how the United States Department of Agriculture has kind of, gone back and forth and changed things around, and they're trying, but still down in the bottom corner here in 2011, they're kind of still at this choosemyplate.gov thing. Still a lot of grains, a lot of dairy, and then a lot of fruit, very little protein and very little vegetable. So I propose more of a food pyramid like this, where you have lots of water, a good amount of veggies, a good amount of meat, fish. Start dropping your fruit down. Be mindful of your nuts and oils, and add your spices in. It's much better for our health and the overall. So, and we've talked about diet, and diet is everything we put in our mouth. So to me, I like to think of it more as a lifestyle of how I eat. There's no one size fits all diet. It just doesn't happen. We have to kind of, when I do a personalized appointment with a patient, I gear it toward what they need. And so if it's an athlete, we change the macros around a little bit to support that. If it's somebody that's just doing yoga, something like that, we change it all to adapt to that. So we have to choose a diet that optimizes that patient's needs, and the quality of the food is super important. Remember, you always hear me say nutrition rich, fiber dense. We want to reduce all those refined flours and sugars and get them out of the diet. Not saying that you can't have them, but they're just really low nutrient food. When you eat them, you're still hungry. You're hungry because your body knows that was not nutrition rich and fiber dense, and it's asking for more, not more of the bad stuff. It wants the good stuff. So proper hydration is key for a healthy living and just overall health. And we've talked about water last time. We want to talk about exercise. I'm big on that. So if you're not exercising and you don't know how, invest in some instruction with a personal trainer. All the gyms have them. Or go to a class like at the YMCA. They all have programs that can get you started. The running store in Altamont and Orlando, Fleet Feet, have a program called Couch to 5K. So if you want to run a 5K, they take you from literally not being able to do anything to a 5K. So what an awesome experience that is for people that have never exercised before. So certain exercises are good for certain people, but some can be harmful. So When I have my patients in their appointments for their functional medicine appointments, that's also something I do, kind of gear a workout toward that specific patient. If you don't like to run, I'm not going to tell you to be a runner. So we want to pick something you like to do. But exercise professionals are, your best choice for getting you through the exercise and keeping you from getting hurt. So it's a miracle drug. I think it's very much a miracle drug. But you can take it often. You'll live longer and healthier life if you take it. Lower medical cost, better sleep, productive work days, mood enhancement. So if you're having a bad day and you're got your head down, you can't feel bad if you have your head up while you're exercising. It's just virtually impossible. So it reduces your risk of chronic disease. There are few to no side effects. Every dose is 100% effective. And the most powerful thing is it's free. So use it. So when we talk about macros, that's one side of this. So then it's going to lead us into more of what we call a ketogenic diet. Now, I'm not asking my patients to be go into a ketosis or do keto. There are some patients that we do, but the majority of patients, we kind of change that around a little bit. But you hear that all the time. So I think you need to know what it means. So the biggest thing about when you do keto, you can have real butter. I mean, most ketogenic diets are very similar biological outcomes of calorie restriction and intermittent fasting. So you have like the best of both worlds. You can eat food that is delish. So the ketogenic diet was initially formulated for kids that were epileptic. And they found that when they reduced their carbohydrates, they reduced their epileptic seizures. So that was where this all kind of came about. Then scientists were like, oh, wow, we get a lot of benefits from this. So we want to make sure we support the body. But when we have glucose combined with proteins and other things, it starts to gum up the normal workings of our body. So the doctors will use metformin because, people are now type 2 diabetic from eating that way to really relieve that. But the metformin has a lot of side effects, and I'd rather you change your eating and diet first before you do that. So the ketogenic diet, or keto for short, it's a low carb, high fat diet that offers many, many benefits. One of the big things that I like, it helps you to lose weight, but it also improves your health at the same time, which is so mind blowing for our minds because we've been told so many years since the 60s that fat is bad. Remember, it's not the fat that makes you fat. It's the sugar that makes you fat. So ketogenic diets have been used, for all different types of things, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, big studies out on Alzheimer's as well. They're just saying that for somebody that has Alzheimer's, or even to stave it off early on, high doses, and I teach a whole class on that, but high doses of MT oil, medium chain MCT oils and medium chain triglycerides, which is coconut oil. And that just does amazing things for the brain. Fish oil does amazing things for the brain. So, that's why I think the ketogenic diet or low carb, high fat diet is so valuable for the brain of us as we age and for our kids growing up. We load them up with sugar. How can they think? How they can't even sit still? I think the parents saw that when they had to homeschool them in the last couple of years during COVID. So maybe that'll help to change that. But patients that have cancer, glucose or sugar feeds cancer. So eliminating that from the diet will certainly help, stave that off. I'm not saying it's going to fix everything, but it sure gives you a fighting chance. So when you reduce the carbs, you put your body into what we call a metabolic state called ketosis, which is not generally what I do for a patient unless they're super insulin resistant. That's a whole another story. Most of my patients are not at that place, but it turns fat into ketones in the liver, and then the brain can utilize that when you don't have enough carbohydrates. So it causes really massive reduction in blood sugar and insulin levels. So we don't need metformin, because metformin has tremendous side effects. One of the worst side effects it has is diarrhea. But it can cause other things too. It has black box warning of lactic acidosis. So I'd rather just change the eating and be more mindful like that. So we have different types of what we call ketonic diets. And there's a standard where it's 20 to 50 grams per day. There's a targeted, which is 25 to 50 grams when you're adding your exercise in. So my athletes are going to do something more like that. And then there's a cyclic diet. So you can kind of eat low carb for several days, then maybe have a couple of days of high carb. Honestly, and if you have a weight management issue, I don't even steer that way. Rarely do I steer that way. If you were at your ideal weight, like in our household on Sundays is kind of what we call our feed day. We have our little, gluten-free pizza. I mean, it still has good ingredients on it. It's not something from, the hut of pizza or anything like that. So we can control the ingredients on there. So when you're at your goal weight or where you want to easily maintain, it's okay to do that. You just don't do it all the time. So there are specifics when we talk about the standard. This is a very low carb, moderate protein, and high fat. And it's typically 75% to 20%, 75% fat, 20% protein, and 5% carbs. So, I kind of take that and then I kind of blend it for my patients. So your macros, like we talked about, would be keeping your carbohydrates under 100. Your protein would be half your body weight in grams of protein. So remember, I'm 130, so I would do 55 to 65. An athlete, I would let them go up a little bit higher. And then your fat would be whatever your ideal body weight is. If we did that at the body weight you are, then we would maintain the body weight that you are. That's not what we want. So if we start feeding our body for that body weight, the body can easily get to that weight and then easily maintain. And I've been doing this probably since 2015, almost 2016, I think, more strict. So for you're eating a little less protein. So people think it's like an Atkins. No, that's not what we're doing here. So 50 to 100 grams of protein for a woman, but like I just gave you your macros of half your body weight in grams of protein. Eating more fat, so avocados. Don't throw the egg yolks away. Homemade mayo. Mayo is just oil and eggs. So you can get some avocado oil or some olive oil and some eggs and put it in your NutriBullet, and you can make your own mayonnaise. Homemade dressings, your olives, your organic whipping cream, your grass-fed butters, and your vegetables and your meats. So cutting the carbs is always the hard part because most of you are addicted to carbohydrates. That's why we do the blood sugar program. It's to kind of get those calm of those sugar cravings that we have. So usually people don't go into ketosis unless they eat between 30 to 50 grams of carbs. I'm not asking you to do that, but there's a doctor from Duke recommended that stricter 20 total carbs for people that have severe insulin resistance. So some of my patients that really battle weight, we will do that, but only for short periods of time. Till we get them in there, then we change the macros, just to get their body start in that right direction. It's like setting the thermostat. And portion distortion, so people freak out because I'm telling them, their body weight in grams of fat. But remember, it's like double the calories of a protein or carbohydrate. So it's not like that much. But if you want to have 10 heads of broccoli, by God, go for it. So, you're not going to, the portions aren't too big. What you'll find is if you're eating the right amount of fat, you just won't be hungry. You're getting all you need. And if you're eating enough good fat, then your body can then utilize fat. So our body needs fat. It needs it for our organs. It needs for all different kind of things. So if you don't have that, then we have constipation. We have your organs don't really have the cushioning in there. So we have to have fat. And if we're not eating enough fat, then the body's going to like, well, I'm not getting rid of any of this fat because you're not giving me any and I need it. So if you eat enough fat, then it gives the body permission to utilize the fat. That's the whole idea. But that's what we've been kind of skewed over the years, is that we were told, that the fat is what makes us fat. And now after all these years, we've reduced fat, but we've increased sugar because the food doesn't taste good because it has no taste. We don't have the fat in there. And the same amount of heart disease is still available. And now we have diabetes to add on to that. And that's like more of a pandemic than, to me, COVID. So, I mean, we have almost 70% of our population is either overweight or obese. And if they're going to be overweight or obese, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be a type 2 diabetic, or will turn into a type 2 diabetic. We can make it happen. We can fix it also. So, this also kind of teaches you to eat more intuitively. You sit down, we make dinner, we sit down and pay attention to the flavor of the food. I mean, if I spent, 30, 45 minutes making something, I don't want to devour it in 5 minutes. And I, pay attention to where the food came from and all that kind of good stuff. So relax and sleep, very important. Meditation, really important. Giving yourself time to, let this work out. And after the 10-day program's over, this is what I would recommend for you to kind of switch over to as an eating style, because you're already prepped for it, especially if you're doing blood sugar and inflammation, because they're both really reducing your blood glucose. So, when you lose weight, also, it helps to balance your hormones like cortisol and leptin and ghrelin. And ghrelin, these two, leptin, are what the body, or the hormones the body utilizes to make fat and burn fat. So we want to make sure we have those in check. And then, there's a lot of information out there. Keto Clarity is a really good book. DietDoctor.com has a great amount of information. It's a paid for website, but go for it. Dr. Google, and that's why I put that cartoon there, and drberg.com. They all have some really good information. So if you're not really sure, they have recipes and things like that. So this is kind of your low carb grocery list. Not a bad way to live. I mean, instead of white flour, you're having almond flour and coconut flour. I make the most amazing mug cake, and it has basically maybe 3 grams of carbohydrates, and it's made out. And I tell you what I'll do is I will, if you want the recipe, email Marianne and she'll send you the PDF on it. Super easy to make. I mean, I can do 2 of them and make them in less than 10 minutes, and it'll be stuff that you have at the house. So and then I whip up some organic whipping cream and put it on top, and it's like a real treat. So you would enjoy that. But look at these. I mean, should be something fairly easily to take with you. And I can also make this available, and I'll send Marianne this, and she can send it to you as a PDF as well. You just have to email her and ask her for it. So when we're in ketosis or we're doing low carb, high fat, there are also a couple things that I do personally. We need to support, beets. We're careful with beets on a low carb diet because beets are high in sugar, but the beet and the beet leaf are very, very important. So Beta Food has that. Choline helps to manage the blood fats. And then Renotrophin, it's actually to manage the kidneys, support the kidneys. So I found that this has been helpful for me as well. Organically bound minerals, and some of you are taking trace minerals of B12. Any of those are your micronutrients, which are your minerals. Creatine and whey, those are all in the powders that you're taking now. So I got you covered there. So those who think they have no time for healthy eating will sooner or later have to find time for illness. That's the whole point of why I teach you. That's the whole point of why I do this, is because I want you to have the quality of life. I want us to live to where 90 or 100. And I don't want you sitting in a wheelchair drooling on yourself because you didn't do this now. This is the time, most of my audience out there is in that 40 and up range. We talk about longevity, and I'll get a little bit more into that on the next class. I feel like that if I can kind of help you understand the why, then it makes it easier to do that. And I will tell you that doing a low carb, high fat lifestyle is you're very satiated. I mean, you never get hungry. I always say, when I get hungry, I don't have an appetite, which means when I do get hungry, I have time to think about what I'm going to eat. In our house, we do a lot of preps. We made a keto dish for the week. So we'll eat, that makes it easy. Like when we get home late, or if I have to teach a class. And then if you're hungry and you don't have anything made, then you're scrambling. This way it's already done. You can cut it. We keep it in separate containers. You can make it really easy. We do that with chicken. We do that with beef. We do that with fish. So, prepping is certainly the key for all this, and always having vegetables available. Frozen are fine. I don't mind it at all. You can find some really great things that, you may not be able to find during the wintertime. They're always in the frozen section. So I don't ever have a problem with frozen. So I didn't want to keep you long, but I wanted to give you a little, push and, make sure that everybody's going in the right direction. So our next class will be next Wednesday at 6:30. I will send the recording of this class tomorrow morning, and then I'll send the link out. That I usually do it the day of the class. That way you can't find it. In your email, it'll be right there. So I'll try to send it like later in the morning. All right. We will see you next week. Be good. Make me proud.